Live from the parking lot of Phony Nut Farmers Market.
Can't say that.
Huh?
I'm trying to get you to simplify this every time I'm here, and you just keep make it. You dig yourself in worse.
Live
From Sprouts
from Drake
in Sacramento.
in Sacramento, California. Have a good day. God bless.
Yeah, make me cough.
Yeah, well, we're here, and it's a beautiful day.
we had a week of cold, half cold weather, and half warmish weather.
And it rained a little.
It rained a little, not just enough to annoy you, not enough to.
And we had a routine Monday night magic class.
The last week of the last verse of the Wake World, Crowley's Wake World, about meeting your guardian angel and where he takes you, or where you take each other.
And Lola made it across the abyss last.
May we all. Well, we all, of course, will. In fact, we all really are, but it's just we don't know nothing, and we don't
have to. Okay, it's soon to be Mayday. The workers' flag is deepest red. It shrouded oft our martyr dead. And ere their limbs grow stiff and cold, their lifeblood dyed its every fold. So then raise the scarlet standard high, beneath its folds we'll live and die. Though cowards flinch and traitors sneer, we'll keep the red flag flying here.
It's one of our childhood songs.
Yes.
But we are. It's Mayday, which also is.
It's almost Mayday.
Almost Mayday.
Yeah.
I was going to say because I'm going to not cut Bill talk. So I want to. People can get ready for Mayday. First, I want to talk. When we were children and in the 50s, and we would get these little. They're like paper cups that you would get from water coolers that were pleated and small and white, and only they had ruffles on them and little handles, and we would always get the same thing. I don't know, people would bring them to each other, maybe?
You would exchange them at school. Yeah.
School, and aunties and grandmas would fix them, and I think sometimes even teachers would give them out. Anyway, it was everybody ended up getting one or two. And there was always the same thing in it. These miniature Brock, sort of powdery sugar, pastel-colored mints.
Yeah.
Tiny, they're small ones, and they melt in your mouth. And it was always that. And these were loose. They were not wrapped in these little things. And loose salted peanuts mixed together with those things. Now, don't ask why. We never knew why, nor did we care. We just, it's another treat day, because we had lots of little holidays when we were in grade school, actually.
Yeah, well, there were May baskets, remember?
That's what they were called, May baskets.
May baskets.
And we had Valentine's Day and those things, too, and we actually partied and exchanged things with each other. And then when kids would have birthdays, and their mom would make cookies and cupcakes to take to school, remember? Stuff like that. Everybody always, anyway. So it was an idyllic time, and of course there's the maypole and asparagus for spring, if you know what I mean.
Yes, and
anyway,
as teenagers, we all got naked and danced around the.
No, we didn't. Just kidding.
Oh, no wonder I felt so self-conscious.
That's a good line. Very good. Anyway, so yeah, it's not really spring, but it's kind of. Spring has settled in by the time this happens. Yeah.
And it is the International Workers' Holiday.
And it's the International Workers' Holiday on May Day, which is,
And so, growing up, we were always unashamed that it was International Workers' Day, And sometimes in the 60s, I think when Nixon was president, they stopped calling it that on the calendar and called it Law Day.
See what can happen.
Just in our lifetime, the glorious Mayday parades with red balloons and,
Now, why we appreciated work
Woody
was
Guthrie.
wasn't that Nebraska was socialist, but everybody was a worker.
Everybody was a worker.
I mean, everybody's family, their parents. I mean, both their parents did not work. That was not the big thing yet.
Right.
But quite a few mothers did work, but just not all of them. I mean, they worked terribly hard. They did everything.
They just didn't have a breadwinning job.
They didn't get money for it. But everybody worked, and so work was something to be respected.
Yeah.
And grateful that you had it, and grateful when someone did it for you. And people were paid. Well, you know, you could work. You could actually be a clerk in a J.C. Penney store, and still be the owner.
Raise a family of 3 or 4, and have a car and own a house on one income.
Yeah, and it wasn't. But they weren't. It was modest, and they probably scraped around for extra Christmas money and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was a time when work was actually valued, and the people kept their jobs for years and maybe retired with the same company. This all sounds like a fantasy, but people used to care about who they worked for and the customers. They used to care about their customers and their products. They were proud of them and things like that. Things that just don't happen anymore.
We're just old people
Right, no,
talking about. We were raised in almost a 19th century environment.
It was strangely idyllic time when children were actually treated as children. We got to go play.
We played outside.
We played, and it was a time when we were free of grown-ups. There were no organized soccer and dance lessons and all this kind of crap where kids have to be supervised by adults every minute of their life so their imagination cannot run free. And we didn't have telephones, of course.
And there weren't liquor stores all around, so I wasn't tempted to rob liquor stores. So
What? But there were lots of, every now and then there was an empty lot where kids played maybe baseball or we crawled around in drainage ditches and played
confess
Army.
I played Army.
We all played Army.
Yeah.
Girls played Army too. We crawled around.
Cowboys
through
too. Yeah.
drainage ditches on our bellies and played Army and Cowboys and yeah. And I don't actually remember playing Cowboys and Indians as much as we just played Cowboys. And somebody would get hurt, and I would end up being the nurse or whatever, and all you would go would be all fixed up, and that was it.
Yeah.
Nobody actually died. They got shot, and when you got shot, you admitted you got shot.
Yeah.
You had to go to the nurse or whatever, and she'd fix you up. I mean, it was the honor system.
Yeah. All fixed up.
All fixed up. Everybody did the same thing. I'm sorry, the whole town.
Yeah.
We all knew what to do. But kids get to use their imagination, and it's which in a way teaches you when you're an adult to use your intuition, which are two different things, but it's still they're both head things. You have to admit.
Well, when you look at on the nature shows where you watch baby lion cubs. And how much they just played and played and played.
They play fighting because later they're going to do that.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why we played and played and played, but we didn't grow up. For some reason, we decided we're not going to grow up and be Army people. We had enough of it then. We weren't going to do that.
Yeah, I was never.
But I did play with dolls all the time, orphanage and stuff. I know. And I was someone who would never let their doll lay naked in the middle of the sidewalk. I was always, actually terrified when I would see some kids do that. Abhorred as a child. That girl left her naked doll in the middle of the sidewalk.
What a tramp.
Anyway, but it did teach me to take care of. I was later a babysitter and a good one because I practiced with the doll a lot, with the dolls a lot. So but I didn't have a multitude of children because I figured that was not going to be a good idea. Especially married to Lon, who's not a caregiver. He was fun to play with, Jean Paul, but
yes,
no, he was not a caregiver, so that was going to be too much of a good.
So I was just a manly role model
and clown
and buffoon.
Pretty much. But anyway, that's enough for May. But I wanted to talk about last week was kind of like the last 4 years. I've decided that because since we've been here, I'm pretty much all dead inside. No, I've been living in a hamster habitat with indoor and outdoor venues, and it's thank God for books. That's what I was going to talk about. When you're living in a hamster habitat, thank God for. I worked at Newport Beach Public Library for 10 years, which was glorious. When I was interviewed, the boss asked me the usual kind of questions because I was just the lowest of the low there anyway. And Jean Paul, our son, was already working there, and it was just a few blocks from our home. So anyway, but I think the first question he asked was, "Can you bake?" I guess I passed all the other stuff and said, yes, I can bake, because everybody there was good at their library jobs, but they could bake. And it was kind of like we all sort of took turns, or not officially turns, but we all brought. I mean, I made the best homemade ladyfingered Kahlua, and without mascarpone, I used.
No, she's not kidding.
I used ricotta,
oh my
ricotta
God.
and cream cheese, tiramisu. I never made it again in my life. It was in a glass bowl and layers and everything. I took that to the library. I mean, we baked. And then patrons would, of course, bring in treats and homemade treats, and every now and then the Krispy Kreme donuts, which we'd all get sick eating them because you couldn't stop. Believe me, I don't do that anymore. But anyway, so it was a nice job, but the real perks of that job was I had wonderful people to work with, and I actually got paid at Newport Beach Public Library, and I worked part-time. It was my second education, or third, because the OTO was one of my education things, because I had a multitude of books that I had never seen before. And I was always kind of a reader, but I was sort of stuck in a rut of what I was reading. And the variety of things was, I started reading sort of like herbal reference books and all kind of stuff. I really got into that for a while, but anything else, you'd be surprised if you go to a library and or even a bookstore, and you're not online looking for something specific, which is different, totally different. You go to a library or a bookstore when you're just thrown into the middle of a huge variety of things, and you don't actually, a lot of times, know what you're attracted to, believe it or not. You think it's something, but all of a sudden something will catch your eye, and it'll be something completely different, and once you open it up, you can't put it down. And that's what the library kind of did to me. So, and it's free once you get a very nominal, usually library card doesn't cost anything.
Libraries are in jeopardy now,
yeah,
too.
so I'm kind of recommending, if it's possible, well, a bookstore would be good too, but you have to pay for those. But the library, if you have a library, and they're not some of them are really cheesy right now. The libraries are the one we have now, the little one here is very, not really a huge assortment of things, to put it mildly. But go to a library and throw yourself at the mercy of the library. Walk around in sections you don't usually walk around, and if you're living in the hamster habitat, get something to, as one of my favorite songs is White Rabbit, feed your head something different. because it's also it's an Alzheimer's preventative to do something different. And don't stay in a rut with your thought patterns. Try something that'll totally poke your brain in a different side, and just explore books this week if possible. I'm sure most of you are probably reading more than I do. So
I have a few suggestions.
And are in yeah, I know, and are zillions of times more educated than me. So, but anyway, that's all. I'm just going to advise you: read and feed your head
And
on something completely different.
And happy Mayday Eve.
Well, no, not really. Tomorrow is.
Isn't this the day before Mayday?
No, there's not 29 days in May.
Oh.
I mean April.
Oh, it's 20 days has September, April, May, and no wonder. All the rest of peanut butter.
Get that thing off me.
Oh, I'm getting this off you. Okay, well, thank you very much, dear.
It was just Grandma telling you to read.
For that.
And read to your children.
Thank you, comrade.
Oh yes, well that. Read to your children.
Read to your children.
Make them put down their phones.
Take their phones away.
I know, I hate to say that, but that should be for emergencies.
Yeah.
Not for brain candy.
Okay, I will. We have other stores to go to after this, don't we?
We have Trader Joe's to go to.
And we got to go to the bank. Got to rob a liquor store.
Go to the feed store.
Go to the feed store, get some
chicken food.
Get some coffee and some flour and some sugar.
Feed store. Feed store.
Feed store.
Not general store.
Oh, okay.
That's where you get chicken food and duck pellets.
So, would you roll your window down just a little bit before you step out? Okay. It's almost starting to get warm enough to.
It's hot in the car.
Yeah.
Or else I just got excited talking.
Okay. Please get that.
No.
That vegan chopped liver. That I like so much.
I have no desire for even vegan chopped liver. So. I don't like the vegan. That's another mistake. I don't like vegan burgers to taste. Oh boy, it tastes and looks like meat. Wait a minute. If you've been we're pescatarians, we eat fish. But if you haven't eaten meat in over 50, almost 60 years,
you don't want stuff tasting like meat.
Stuff that tastes like beef. I didn't care for no. We want it to taste good and savory and very flavorful, but not taste and have the texture of beef. That's icky.
Well, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, darling.
I'm going to waddle off now.
Waddle off. Well, she's right about books, and she's right about reading, and I read and write a lot, but I should take her advice more often and read a more assortment of things because I always feel rewarded when I do. In keeping with that, the thing I wanted to share with you this morning is how reading, just like this is a good segue, more or less saved me from I don't want to insult anybody here or anything, but I would say the Midwest consciousness or unconsciousness of, well, my family moved us from Southern California, beautiful Long Beach, to Nebraska when I was 7. And it was a real culture shock. Okay, everything that was absolutely wonderful about it, I didn't see. Okay, because I was so hung up on how dull it was, and how it seemed like I was moving at least 100 years back in time, and I was a miserable little boy, and I write about it. Let's see, hang on. I hated Nebraska. I hated the way they talked. I hated the way they laughed about butchering animals. I hated the way they preached about the wrathful God. And this was right in Sunday school. A God who hates Negroes and Chinese, even though there wasn't a Negro or a Chinese person within 100 miles of our provincial town. A God who would condemn little boys to the flames of eternal torment just for the sin of not believing in a God who hates Negroes and Chinese. Most of all, I hated the way Nebraskans, young and old, actually took smug pride in their own lack of sophistication. They wore their ingenuousness like a badge of honor, and rudely ridiculed and bullied anyone who did not also proudly clothe themselves with the same coarse robe of premeditated ignorance. Now, in those days, I would have said the people who took pride in being unwoke. I must admit this sounds terribly unkind. Hate's a strong and unhealthy passion, especially for a 9-year-old boy. But hate springs from fear, real or imagined. And in my young mind, there was much to fear in Nebraska. Even as a youngster, I sensed a palpable darkness, a prairie madness, a nameless evil brooding just underneath the surface of the bib overalls and the cotton house dresses, a slumbering beast just waiting to be awakened by the kiss of alcohol or jealousy or greed or lust. An evil that is ever mindful the nearest policeman is many miles, perhaps hours away. A black and primitive wickedness that takes poisonous root in the solitary psyche of those who toil alone in the earth from dawn to dusk, season after season, year after year. An evil that smothers in the heart all breath of human compassion or empathy for the pain and terror they inflict daily on the helpless beasts they slaughter, they breed for slaughter, or the children they breed for labor and war. A twisted and perverse evil that feeds on guilt and self-loathing, an evil that incubates in the deafening silence of sweltering summer nights or the perpetual darkness of winter, and hideously hatches like a basilisk egg into monstrous acts of rape, incest, murder, and suicide. Well, I'm sure it wasn't as bad as all of that, but in my darkly romantic 7 or 8 year old or 9-year-old mind, that's the way it was. Yes, there was much for a young man to fear in Nebraska. I was lonely, depressed, and morose. You're so desperate you learn words like morose. One sweltering, humid summer morning, I became so desperately bored, I did something unthinkable for a 9-year-old boy in Nebraska. I found something to read. And I go on to tell about, I found Edgar Allan Poe. And he blew my mind. I wasn't sure what about 3/4 of his vocabulary was, but I just absolutely loved it. I loved where it took me. And I had a chance to be introduced to that in that dark, sepia-toned, buzzing 19th century silence of eastern Nebraska in 1950 something, 59 maybe, 58. It's just like the whole environment was just perfect to be introduced to that, because much of the horror genre that I would soon become acquainted with was written in the 19th century. So I was writing this as an introduction to the Weiser book of horror and the occult, which is an anthology of Poe and Lovecraft and Crowley. There's Crowley stories in there. Robert W. Chambers and Bulwer-Lytton stuff. But I intended to just read a little bit about what I have to say about Bulwer-Lytton, Lord Sir Edward Bulwer-Lytton. Because in a sense, he was one of the founding fathers of the horror genre. It was so early, you really couldn't call it a horror genre. But there wouldn't have been a Poe, there wouldn't have been a Chambers, there wouldn't have been a Lovecraft without Bulwer-Lytton. 1803 to 1873. So he died like 2 years before Crowley was even born. So I know we're going over time here, but amuse me for a second. Sir Edward Bulwer-Lytton. Have you ever heard the phrases, "It was a dark and stormy night," or "The pen is mightier than the sword," or the phrase, "Pursuit of the almighty dollar"? These familiar cliches first poured forth from the pen of Sir Edward Bulwer-Lytton, a prolific English playwright, poet, and novelist. As might be expected of a gentleman of his breeding, the noble Lord Lytton pursued these literary diversions as an amateur, while he busied himself with the serious duties of serving Queen Victoria as Secretary of State for the colonies, and a wide assortment of other stiff-collared diplomatic and political responsibilities. He published his first book of poems in 1820, and in 1828, when his semi-titillating essay on the whimsical subject of 19th century dandyism was released, it was clear to the reading public that here was a fellow who could be wryly entertaining as well as erudite. While his occult tales of horror stories have become favorites of lovers of the mysteries and the macabre, Lytton's most publicly beloved and familiar works remain his post-biblical epic, The Last Days of Pompeii. He wrote that in 1834, which has, for over the years, captured the imagination of filmmakers. And he had another book, which was a dramatic historical fiction called Rienzi, I think the full title is Rienzi, the Last Tribune of Rome, which Richard Wagner turned into an enduring opera. And if you haven't seen the opera, you're probably familiar with the overture. It's just like a horse riding. It's just, but I digress. Let's see. Where's Rienzi? His popularity with the general public notwithstanding, Lord Lytton deserves serious recognition as one of the primary godfathers of horror. This enduring admiration attests to his skill with words, but even more impressive are his impeccable credentials among serious occultists. And here, I'm going to touch on the subject. It's almost like what came first, the chicken or the egg? Are these occult writers trying to unveil secrets of the occult? Or are the so-called secrets of the occult created by the writers? Listen to this for a second. Although empirical evidence is absent, Lytton is said to have been an initiate of one or more of the mysterious continental magical secret societies that obliquely claimed they were of ancient Rosicrucian origins. He was almost certainly the friend and confidant of the great French magician Alphonse Louis Constant, or Eliphas Levi, 1810 to 1875, the father of modern ceremonial magic. As a young member of the Rosicrucian order, Amorc, I was introduced by my elder adepts, in no uncertain terms, that I was to read and study the works of Lord Lytton, especially his occult story, Zanoni, written in 1842, which was a full generation before the founding of Blavatsky's Theosophical Society or the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Now, the opening words of Zanoni can be interpreted as a Rosicrucian confession from Lord Lytton himself. It so chanced that some years ago, in my younger days, whether of authorship of life, I felt the desire to make myself acquainted with the true origins and tenets of the singular sect known by the name of Rosicrucians. While the plot of Zanoni is a darkly appealing love story that inaugurates all the genteel devices of classic horror love that we will, in a few years later, recognize in the works of Edgar Allan Poe, Robert W. Chambers, and others. But the text of Zanoni also reveals to the trained eye the language of a fellow occultist. In fact, it's clear that Zanoni could not possibly have been written by anyone other than a bona fide initiate of the mysteries. The story even makes indirect reference to a magic book, a book that is undoubtedly the very real tome known to scholars today as the Book of Abramelin. This landmark occult grimoire, written in 1378, remained untranslated and unknown to the English-speaking world, or indeed anyone but the most knowledgeable and serious students of the occult, until 1888, when Golden Dawn adept S.L. MacGregor Mathers translated fragments of the text which he found in the Bibliothèque de l'Arsenal in Paris. The Book of Abramelin is considered by many to be the Rosetta Stone of Western magic, elevating the misunderstood superstitions of the medieval sorcerers to a spiritual science as sacred and viable as self-transformational traditions of Eastern mysticism. As it would seem, His Lordship Sir Edward Bulwer-Lytton, dandy, diplomat, and novelist, was rubbing elbows on a regular basis with the very same mystics and magicians who not only knew of the Book of Abramelin's existence, but were intimately familiar with its contents and significance. It's clear to me that where the secret occult mysteries and practices are concerned, it was not a case of Lord Lytton gleaning his occult knowledge from 19th century early Rosicrucian pretenders, but one of 19th century Rosicrucians getting their occult knowledge from him. Okay, that's it for today. The parking lot is getting full.
You too, Christina. Bye.
Okay, that's it for today. We'll see you tomorrow from indoors, probably. And continue to be good to yourself, be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.